People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange. People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. When you're strange, faces go out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange, I did. When you're strange, faces go out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange.
I do not have the script open.
Good evening, folks. We're professionals.
Yeah, okay. So, greetings, folks. Welcome to Stage Soliloquy, where if you like our sidebars, then you'll love this. Welcome to our October-themed month, where we'll give a month-long celebration to one of our favorite holidays. With me is my intellectual superior and good friend, the Authenticator, aka Dalton L. Mortimer.
Yes. And this is Halloween. For at least the month of October.
Yes, and I'm your host slash, wannabe Dr. Frankenstein, or is it Frankenstein? The brainstormer of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight on this fine October 5th?
Well, I am doing just fine, but I can't speak for our audience, or if we have one.
Fair enough. Okay, so, right. But first, a word from our sponsor. We don't have one.
We will hopefully at some point be brought to you by you, as and when we get enough of an audience to justify having a crowdfunding platform thing.
That's going to be a few years in the making. I'm sure.
I hope so, and hopefully I will also have one at some point, but that will be after I have hit 1,000 subscribers on my channel. So if you want me to be making money at this whole YouTube thing sooner rather than later, go and subscribe to my channel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for our first topic of Offstage Soliloquy of the October's themed, we really got to come up with a term for our version of covering things for October.
Our Halloween spooktacular. There. Sometimes the puns are useful for things.
Yeah. Halloween spooktacular it is. So our first topic of discussion is aspects of horror. So my first question for an aspect of horror is kind of one that's mainly in, I would assume, mostly horror movies itself. I'm not sure in fiction. Feel free to tell me, Don. Is less more or is it not?
I think it very much depends on the kind of horror, because shocking imagery can be a source of horror, and of course we all know the bracing thrill of the jump scare, but as we all almost certainly also know, the jump scare and the gore horror are some of the lowest forms of horror. In fact, I would venture to say um, the more psychologically invested you become in a horror movie, the more horrifying it is. Because anyone can make something overtly scary terrifying, but it takes a special level of craftsmanship to make the slow creeping things at the corner of your vision terrifying.
Yeah. I have to agree with Don. It all just really depends on what's happening. I feel like in some like the slasher genre, I think mostly it gets away with that on the fact that it is kind of a lower denomination of the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
Though, granted, slasher genre is my favorite genre of horror. Though I know its problems. Um, I would say there are some movies or some stories that could do the whole less is more thing and have done it well. I can't think of them off my head because uh, there aren't a lot of them, so they're very rare. I would say.
The funny thing about the less is more approach is both H.P. Lovecraft and Alfred Hitchcock preached sort of the virtues of the less is more approach. Hitchcock famously said, "There's nothing more frightening than an unopened door," and despite the tentacle porn that H.P. Lovecraft's mythos has largely morphed into, he doesn't really describe them as such. He mostly just goes out of his way to very thoroughly describe them as mind bending and unknowable, essentially forces of darkness.
Yeah. So again, it's a give and take thing. Honestly, it works and it also doesn't work. So it just again, it really depends on what you're going for, I guess. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I had actually written this scene that was like a slasher movie, and I was actually writing a script for it last year, I believe. This is actually way before we even met, Dalton.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had this scene where a guy would open the bathroom door, but we don't see what he sees, and you just see like him in this utter shock and disbelief of the scene in the bathroom.
Hmm.
And then he gets killed immediately after. But you never see what made him so appalled and sick and disturbed by. Make the audience guess. Because, the scariest thing is what people come up with in their minds.
Yeah. Again, to quote Hitchcock, "There's nothing more frightening than an unopened door."
Yeah. Uh, is there anything else we could cover on that? Or
No, we can move to the next sub question if you like.
yeah. Themes around horror. Because horror is actually a very versatile genre that has basically had a wide variety range of horror of themes uh,
Mm-hmm.
around it. Like, do you remember the movie It Follows?
I do, but only very vaguely.
Well, to be honest, I never really cared to watch it. Didn't really look that interesting or appealing to me. But apparently, one of its major themes, well, it was kind of an allegory, not an allegory, basically the theme was about protected sex.
Mm.
And effectively, the monster of that movie was an STD, to be oversimplifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
sounds absolutely horrible, and not in the good, appropriate for the genre kind of way.
yeah. Well, the thing is that there was this curse for this curse that when you have sex, that if you have sex, there's this thing that follows you, and it looks like anyone. And when it catches you, it will kill you. So the thing is, you have to transfer the curse to someone else by having sex with them.
Okay, so somebody used some really fucked up sex magic to curse somebody, apparently, I guess.
I don't know. Again, I wasn't really interested in the movie because it just didn't look interesting.
For whatever the, sort of genuine occultism approach to things matters here. Sex magic is a thing by virtue of the fact of sort of how to describe it. In magic, the life energy that is manipulated, which is the fundamental source of all magic, can be subdivided into various different categories, and one of the most potent forms of human life energy is that which we release and manipulate during sexual interactions. So there is an entire sort of subcategory of magic that is spells relating to sex.
Huh. Well, I already knew that because Corrupt had mentioned it when I talked about like the idea of Constantine being mentor to Raven.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish, as much as I love John Constantine, and I do, I love John Constantine. He's my fourth favorite uh, character in all of comics. I wish DC would give more credit to Dr. Fate, especially because they keep shitting on Dr. Fate as a character for some reason. And I think, given the otherworldly, extra-dimensional nature and scale of Raven's magic, she probably would need someone more experienced to help her control things. Because John is many things, but the bastion of self-control is not one of them.
That I will grant you. However, in my version, it's just they met up in essentially the same asylum, and he kind of taught her some things, not all things. And
Well, but the other thing is, as my borrowed intro occasionally reminds us, John's magic is the magic of the dark arts, and Raven, by virtue of being the daughter of Trigon, really shouldn't be fucking with dark magic. She should be forced to learn the lightest of the light magics, honestly, to avoid bringing out her daddy issues.
fair.
Because basically anything that John Constantine could teach Raven would probably end up ending the universe because Trigon would take the advantage of her
Well,
feeding off her darkness. And
again, my story was going to be that she finds out probably in season 2 that she's daughter of essentially the devil.
Trigon the Terrible, yes.
If anything, I'd have her go away for season 3 during Jason's death to learn magic from Dr. Fate.
Yeah, that works.
Because,
but
I had said I wanted to pair her with Jason, Todd, just because I think they would work.
yeah, probably. Especially given that Dick is already older in this case.
Yeah. All right, that was a sidebar, and one I might talk about later after season 2 of Titans. I might try and get the DC Universe app to fully review both seasons.
Also Swamp Thing, because
Yeah.
Swamp Thing's on.
Um,
And Doom Patrol, because Doom Patrol is probably the best comic book TV show currently existing.
Yeah, I saw the pilot for that. It was good. Well, I did a review of that actually. So,
Hmm.
how long ago was that?
That was like our second or third show, I thought.
No. The review of Titans and Doom Patrol pilots. That was. Oof, I think that was like before even June.
Yeah, we met in March, so that probably would have been around, I want to say May-ish that happened.
Yeah, someone go through our back catalog of videos and like tell me which one that was because I don't remember.
Yes, go chat, but go after the stream. We need the views and the watch time and things.
And my dog just barged into my room. What do you want? Go away.
I don't know why, but that was extremely funny to me.
And you should have seen when she looked at me. How she looked at me. Okay. Now I'm back. But yeah. Themes around horror. Overall, I feel like a lot of modern horror movies and stuff kind of forego a theme.
Yeah, it's just let's put these characters in this situation or give them this MacGuffin and see what happens, kind of. Which, to be fair, that kind of works and has worked for as long as human civilization has been telling ghost stories and folk stories and
I'm
things
not,
of that nature.
I do agree with that. I'm just more of. I feel like there's a severe lack of quality in modern horror movies.
Yeah, but I I can appreciate B movies. It just the only problem I have with modern horror is that it seems like every horror movie is a B movie now.
Yeah.
Whereas before we had the likes of John Carpenter, who is probably between John Carpenter and Wes Craven, they are probably the modern masters of horror.
Actually, there was something I wanted to bring up. I was thinking for another soliloquy, but since we brought up John Carpenter and Wes Craven, um, well, specifically Wes Craven, I'm sure you know about the movie Scream, right?
Of course.
Right. Um, and I had sent you video essays that I thought we could review for our one shot yesterday of Scream.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of brings up the kind of subgenre of meta horror.
And by extension, horror comedies probably as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Cabin in the Woods, Trick or Treat, Scream,
Mhm.
Scary Movie, although that leans a little bit heavier on the comedy than on the horror comedy aspect.
I still like Scary Movie, specifically Scary Movie 2, because I think it's funnier.
I'm not a big fan of like the skit parody format, so I don't really care for those movies as much. Granted, comparing scary movies to say disaster movie or epic movie, I would rather watch Scary Movie in a heartbeat. But
Yeah,
it,
I,
the whole sketch thing doesn't really jibe with my sense of humor in general.
yeah, I kind of see that as. But what I was getting at is that and I do wish there were a few more movies who did this with with some added quality to it,
Mm-hmm.
where where the characters kind of know the things of the tropes and stuff of horror movies and things like that.
Yeah,
There are
I agree because it seems as though 90% of all horror movies exist in a world where no one has ever watched a horror movie ever. And one of my favorite things that is done in the kind of meta horror movies is there's always that one character that is the horror movie expert or the supernatural expert, and they go, guys, we should do anything but the things that people normally do in horror movies.
There is actually a video on where people actually make smart decisions. I would have to find it, and I think you might know which video I'm talking about, where basically all the stupid tropes that ended up getting people killed in horror movies, they do the exact opposite.
There have been quite a few videos like that.
Yeah.
I think because if anything, it really is that obvious to most people. It's just like when you're in this kind of situation, do literally anything else.
Like I would say the whole splitting up thing is the one of the most bullshit things
Yeah,
ever.
it's like do not isolate yourselves. There is strength in numbers, dipshits.
Yeah. If I was being honest, if I were to make like a meta horror movie, I would basically make Halloween, but yeah, I would make Halloween, but it would kind of be the origin style for the Michael Myers character. But
So something akin to, although not exactly like the Rob Zombie ones,
no,
where
no,
they sort of explain
uh,
his origin.
no. Essentially, the character is kind of in that midpoint of being like the shape of being
Mm-hmm.
Michael Myers and the shape. He's in that midpoint, and at the end, he fully becomes the shape. That creature that isn't really human is kind of more just a primal force of evil.
Yeah. Which, incidentally, I liked a lot of the later Halloween movies because they did play with that idea that he was just a force of nature, complete with quasi-apocalyptic demonic cult thing that worshipped him like a deity, which was
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, the Society of Thorn, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yep.
Yeah. There was actually, well, no, I'm not gonna bring that up, but someone had said like the man in black, um, before the Society of Thorn movie came out, like someone had suggested the idea that he could have been the devil, like like evil. Michael Myers begets evil, evil begets evil.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting idea.
It
Um,
it reminds me a little bit of Stephen King's sort of expanded mythos in the Dark Tower series. We find out that all of his like devil characters are either the same being or working for the same being.
yeah,
And he goes by the euphemism the man in black as well, ironically.
yeah, they really fucked up with the movie.
Oh god, the movie. Though I will give Matthew McConaughey some credit. I thought he did a really good job playing the kind of wandering trickster
Mhm.
deal
Yeah, I
making
don't.
demon character.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I also liked Idris Elba as Roland Deschain.
Though if you read the books, the
Yeah,
race swap
I know about
makes it a little bit frustrating.
dude. I know about that, and yeah, that's a real stupid thing that happened. Overall, I
Mhm.
think it was a good choice. I do wish they'd stuck more with the books, or at least instead of trying to, because they do the thing a lot of modern movie adaptations do. Well, a lot of modern movies do anyway. Is they try to stuff so much stuff in.
Yeah. They dove so far into the things that they actually forgot where the fuck they were going.
I had
That
actually
being
read.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I had actually read the first book before I had seen the movie. I'm not sure if it was after I'd seen the movie, but either way, I noticed how different it was, and the book was so much better.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know, the Dark Tower series is basically Stephen King's like magnum opus. It's his equivalent of something like Gaiman with Sandman or something.
I,
That be, huh? Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say I'd actually tried to write something akin to the Dark Tower series once years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't pan out.
Yeah. I will say that if they ever decide to bring Matthew McConaughey back for a Stephen King adaptation, please, for the love of God, let it be Needful Thing. Him as Leland Gaunt, aka Mr. Gaunt, would be amazing, and I want it. So please, uh, Warner Brothers or whoever currently has the rights to fucking Stephen King's oeuvre, give me Matthew McConaughey as Leland Gaunt, please. I will be so grateful if you do that.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else you wanted to say? On just I know.
No, just Needful Things is my favorite Stephen King book, and Mr. Gaunt is probably my favorite Stephen King character. And Matthew McConaughey has demonstrated he definitely can pull off that kind of Faustian wandering dealmaker character. So give me Matthew McConaughey as Leland Gaunt, please.
Okay. Um. Yeah. So I would prefer more kind of meta horror movies, but not to a point where because you have to have that kind of stupidity with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So bad things happen to them because of that stupidity or
Yeah.
mistakes they make.
The way it was handled in Cabin in the Woods, I thought was perfect because they thought that they were so smart that nothing bad could happen to them, and as a result, they kind of unleashed an apocalypse
Yeah.
because they were so certain it was all going to be bullshit. But it was not bullshit. You should have just played along. It could have spared us all
Though I'm not sure how I feel that we are portrayed as kind of the quote unquote villains.
see. See, everyone keeps saying that, but I don't see that. I think that's them projecting. I think that might be the director or the critics projecting that theme onto the movie. I don't know if it belongs there. Um,
I mean, yeah, it's just when I had watched that, I just enjoyed the fact that, well, for one thing, it takes up the idea that all those things that tend to happen in classic like slasher or horror movies are controlled by a bunch of group of people and are just like,
yeah, I like the idea that like horror tropes need to be met as part of the ritual to satiate these deities. Like that makes it makes sense both internally and externally to the movie, so it works. I think trying to analogize the audience with the deities to be satiated is a different thing entirely. That I think it's just pure postmodern projection. I definitely subscribe to the theory that all classic horror movies do take place in the Cabin in the Woods universe because it just makes sense.
oh,
It
yeah,
it's a
probably.
linchpin that holds everything together. What?
Oh, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. So yeah, overall feelings of the horror genre.
Um, if I had to have one complaint with the horror genre as a whole, my one complaint would be I'd like to see more supernatural horror movies that utilize lore from different cultures, not just the three Abrahamic religions. Because in every exorcism movie, it's always a Judeo-Christian exorcism. It would be nice to see older exorcism rituals, like from pagan cultures or pre-Christian cultures or what have you. Because I've actually run into Christians before who honestly believe that their culture is the only culture that has an exorcism ritual. And then I point out to them that the original Holy Trinity was Isis, Osiris, and Horus in Egyptian mythology, and that their exorcism rite is basically almost a straight one-to-one lift of the Egyptian exorcism rite,
You
and then
know
it
what?
gets really annoying to people.
Huh? You learn something new every day, folks.
Yeah. The original crucifix was obviously the Ankh. The original Holy Trinity was Isis, Osiris, and Horus, and the overarching deity that was always appealed to was either Ra or Atem, which was the Egyptian goddess of life, depending.
Hmm. For me, for I mean, it's fine. I just again, I want I want filmmakers of horror films to put a little more effort into things and a little more variety in terms
Mm-hmm.
of horror movies. You know?
Mm-hmm. Also, speaking as a practicing occultist for many years, stop using the Warrens for everything. The Warrens are a bunch of charlatan fucks. Please, if you're going to use the based on a true story tag, at least go with some true stories that actually might have, conceivably happened, as opposed to the shit that the Warrens just conjured up out of their own imagination. Because very clearly they were imaginative and everything, but they make a mockery of my profession and it annoys me.
You good, good bud?
Rant over. Yeah.
I feel like this isn't going to be the last time you do a rant like that, or it might be longer. I'm sure.
No, if and when we ever have to talk about one of the Conjuring movies, I'm gonna probably go on a ramble about how much I detest the Warrens and how um they basically cheapened occultism by being like the public faces of it now.
We'll probably wait a few years before we ever do those Conjuring movies. Just the fact that
Yeah, and I might get to them on my channel before we even need to talk about them. Who knows?
okay. So yeah, honestly, I kind of want to see more like superhero movies in like the horror genre. Not Brightburn because Brightburn is not a superhero, and I hated that marketing thing that Evil found its superhero. It's a super. Not doing that. Not doing that.
Just let it out, dude.
Well, there's no point. It's already out and all. I don't. We should have covered it when it came out, but I wasn't really interested in it. So.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I could see more sort of fusions of the horror movie and the superhero, or I guess in this case supervillain movie.
yeah. I had actually. Well, I'm still actually working on it, and it's probably not going to be. It's not going to be one of the videos I release in October. I didn't have plans to release it this October anyway. But I had actually worked on like kind of a kind of style of superheroes in horror in horror. Um, I have the Latin term for it, but they are known as the righteously cursed, or is it
Hmm.
righteous cursed? I believe.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. You got a witch. You got, I believe, the boogeyman, a possessed guy, and I also believe Sasquatch. Also a
Fun.
vampire.
Speaking of Boogeyman, speaking of classic Halloween songs, we could have used the Henry Hall song. I think it's called Hush, but it heavily features the Boogeyman. It was used in Sinister Volume 2.
Yeah. You know what? We are actually going to have to cover Halloween mythological creatures of sorts at some point, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, something for next week's soliloquy, or we can get into it now, depending on what the
Well,
Halloween questions are. But anyway, moving on to the next question, I guess.
well, it's actually the next topic, which is Halloween candy.
Yum.
Yeah. So the first question is, what's your favorite type of Halloween candy?
Specifically for Halloween, my favorite sort of Halloween related snack thing is popcorn balls. I absolutely love popcorn balls.
I don't think I've had those. Not to my memory, at least.
Oh my, because I make a point to have them every year. That is just wow. Um,
Wait, you don't eat sandwiches, okay? I think you cut me some slack on not eating popcorn balls.
Okay, but there's a difference between not ever wanting them and not ever having
Well,
had access to
again, I
them.
might have had them when I was younger, like young enough to where I can't remember them. I just it. You have to keep in mind that I have a semi bad memory. So
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, my favorite sort of Halloween oriented candy thing is popcorn balls. Um, Second to that would probably be um, and this is gonna sound really weird, but have you ever seen those they're gummies, but they're like gummy body parts?
not to my knowledge.
Yeah, I really enjoy those as well. Like I remember this one time when I was really little, I had a gummy tongue that was like green, and it glowed in the dark, but it was like green apple flavor, and it was like the actual size of a human tongue. It was really good.
Okay,
Hmm.
huh?
And you can get like gummy eyeballs and gummy brains and things
I
too.
think I think I've had a few gummy eyeballs before, but
No,
again, that was a while back when I actually did trick or treating. I haven't done trick or treating in years.
yeah, no, and in my opinion, trick or treating is like the least important portion of Halloween, so I haven't done it in a while either.
I stopped doing it when I was, I think, either 11 or 12.
I don't remember when I stopped doing it, because even when I stopped trick or treating, Halloween was still so important to me that I got in the festive mood regardless.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I haven't stopped. I just hand out candy and scare the shit out of little kids,
Hmm.
which
I
is my
never,
favorite part, by the way.
yeah, we established that I think a couple streams ago that you enjoy giving the little buggers some childhood trauma. So,
Actually, I should tell. I think I should tell the story I told you before stream.
hmm.
Okay, so this was last year. Um, uh, and almost every year since I've been handing out candy, I do the classic scarecrow prank where I pretend to be basically just like a body or something holding like a bowl of candy in my lap.
Hmm.
You know, pretend to be an inanimate object, and when someone comes close to me, I just do the whole springing up and scaring them crap. So okay, so last year I'm just waiting for some people to come along. I don't know how long I was sitting on my steps for. It's a while. I'm wearing like a purge mask. Like I think I can find a picture. Hold on. But essentially, a car pulls up, and keep in mind, there's hardly any trick or treater traffic where I'm at,
Hmm.
so I don't get a lot of trick or treaters. Um, but so I'm pretending to be the scarecrow thing, and so like a kid comes up. Well, is like on the sidewalk after stepping out of the car. I do like a little head tilt or something, and they just jump and run right back in without getting any candy, and they just drive off. Actually, I think it was like a teenager or something.
That's extra funny.
Yeah, I mean, I felt bad because I didn't get any candy for me scaring them.
I think in that kid's personal horror movie, you were the slasher.
I always wanted to be a slasher, so. Alright, hold on. Okay.
I prefer being the mastermind villain, but that's just me.
Okay, yeah, it's this mask on the side here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was how my Halloween went last year.
But anyway, you never answered the question. What's your favorite Halloween candy?
Um, Honestly, there are a lot of Halloween candies I like, but if I were to boil it down, I think candy corn is like my major one.
I don't like store-bought candy corn very much, but the few times I've had homemade candy corn, it's been good.
I don't think I've ever had homemade candy corn.
I will send you a recipe after we're done with the stream because it's easy, it's super easy to do, and it's delicious.
Yeah.
So,
I did tell you yesterday that I like pumpkin pie, though I didn't know that doesn't count as a candy. That's just more of a fall dessert than anything, but I love pumpkin pie.
and as I mentioned yesterday when we talked about this, I prefer apple flavored things. That really makes me think of fall more. In fact, we actually have self-service like apple orchards around here where you can go apple picking.
Oh, you
And
lucky bastard.
yeah, and well, it's one of the benefits of being in the most rural part of Pennsylvania. I swear to fucking God. But that being said, the people that run the orchard also make apple cider, so we get fresh apple cider
I
right
don't
around this time of year.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had cider at all.
Holy fucking hell!
Isn't it some type of alcohol?
Okay. Let's clear this up. Yes, it can be alcoholic, and probably most traditionally it is, but they also make non-alcoholic. Um, they also make non-alcoholic apple cider,
Okay.
which is basically they take apple juice and they distill it down several times, similar to how you make maple syrup out of tree sap, and it essentially intensifies the apple flavor, and it's
Okay.
delicious.
Okay. Well, again, let's add it to the list of things I need to do in my life because Dalton said I should probably do it.
I appreciate that my opinions on things are that important to you, but also don't. If I ever just like sarcastically say jump off a bridge, please don't do that on my recommendation.
I'm not that dumb. I may be an idiot, but I'm not stupid.
You're not okay. First of all, let's clear this up right now. You, sir, are not an idiot. I have met many idiots in my life, and you are not one of them.
Okay, I'm a jackass, but I'm not stupid. That's
Fair enough. That I will concede. You are occasionally a bit of a jackass. But then again, you're also 19, so your jackassery is somewhat excused.
how. No, don't answer that. I don't want the answer.
Because teenagers are fucking morons on general principle. No offense.
None taken. I completely agree. Can't tell you how many teenagers I've had to deal with that are complete fucking morons.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and for the record, people in their 20s are not much better. Trust me. those few years don't really make that much of a difference to some people.
But okay, so candy corn, pumpkin pie. I mean, there's really nothing else because mostly we get like kind of just typical candy for things.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't eat a lot of candy.
Yeah. That's the hard thing is that it's usually just candy. It's not specifically Halloween related or oriented. Although sometimes you can get candied apples. I don't know if you've ever had those, but they are also delicious. Speaking of apple
I've had
things that I
caramel.
associate with huh?
I've had caramel apples before. Didn't like them.
You might like candied apples then, because it's a little bit different.
Okay, so the thing I don't like about caramel apples is almost every time, and this is even with just regular apples I have eaten in the past anyway, is that for some odd reason, every time I try to bite into the apple itself, it's well for caramel apples, it's like a Granny Smith apple or something, so it's like super sour.
Yeah.
But for almost every apple I've eaten, it always ends up having a little bit of rot to it.
In Soviet Russia, you poison apple. Sorry. Oh, the dead meme, but it needed to be made.
I don't even get it.
Okay, the joke.
Well, I know the joke. I get it. I'm just not getting with the context of.
Because of course apples are traditionally thought to be poisoned. Because Snow White and fairy tales and whatnot. And the joke with the Russia X is you thing is it's essentially a reversal of a common thing in order to demonstrate how awful and backward Soviet Russia was. So instead of you poisoning the apple, in this case, in Soviet Russia, apple poisoned you because it always rots on you. I was making a bit of a meta joke.
Okay.
I was joking that the reason why it always rots on you is because it's poisoned. I may have put too many wormholes in my joke.
Probably. But yeah, honestly, I'd say Reese's Cups are like one of my favorite candies for Halloween.
Just in general, I think Reese's are one of the most perfect candies ever.
Yeah.
Because
one of my favorite candies I've eaten is Hershey's Milk and Cookies. No, Cookies and Cream.
Also good.
Yeah.
On the topic of preferred Hershey's, though, I always go for the special dark chocolate Hershey's.
I've tried those before. They just kind of taste bitter to me. I don't know why.
I have always liked them, even as a kid. Even in the diabolical fun size stupidity.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Don, for that good
Transition.
Yeah.
Dun,
Why?
dun, dun.
Yeah. Why fun size sucks and is complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah. Dear candy manufacturers all throughout the Western world, making something smaller, especially when it's something meant to be joyous like candy, does not make it more fun. It just makes you a dickhead who wants to deny people the full experience of their candy privileges. If you truly want to make a fun-sized candy bar, make a candy bar that's like 2 times larger than the average candy bar. That, my dear sirs and madams and others, would be fun-sized. Because candies, okay, are inherently fun. People look to candy for the sake of candy being fun incarnate, basically. Candy is supposed to remind people what good there is in the world. It's supposed to be the universal pick-me-up, etc. So if you want people to have more fun with your product, which is the inherent coalescence of fun. Provide more of it, not less.
Yep. Also, and I'm using air quotes, by the way, fun size? Really? There's nothing fun about it.
Yeah, as I just went over, it's basically torture because you're taking the thing that people use to remind them that life is worth living sometimes. They're again universal pick-me-up, and you are shrinking it down to a ludicrous bite size.
Right. Which is well, actually, I'll get to that in a moment. But I can kind of get why they do it, which is kind of it's cheaper
Mm-hmm.
have the smaller bits, but in a larger amount.
Yeah.
But seriously though, fuck fun size.
Yeah.
It's
Unless you're a mint, there is absolutely no reason why you should be in a bite-sized format.
which is why this year I am going to be buying a lot of regular sized chocolate bars and Twix and stuff like that, and passing that out. Mainly because I won't have any, because like I said, I don't get a lot of traffic where I'm living, so.
So
Well,
you want to make going the extra mile for the candy worth it.
yeah.
Well done. That is extremely in the spirit of Halloween, my good sir.
Well, that and also because I'll probably get able to eat a lot more candy.
Yes, which is also in the spirit of Halloween, such as it is.
So yeah. If you're ever where I'm at, though I can't really say where, on the fact that I value my privacy, come by my house. I will give you a chocolate bar, full size Hershey bar.
He has said in the past that it's somewhere in Indiana and that it's a city of some kind. That should narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's not Indianapolis because fuck those guys.
I, I I was kind of expecting that, but at the same time, it's still funny.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the city's fine. It's just we're both. It's kind of an enemy city,
Yeah, I know how that works. I have been to America before. We get in turf wars over the dumbest shit, but it's part of what makes us American.
Goddamn right. It's funny. I had a Stetson before. Wish I had that.
The top hat I think is better.
Well, the Stetson was for another Scarecrow costume I had years ago. Didn't fit my head anymore, so I threw it out. Also, it was like getting dusty and stuff. So.
Ah.
Right.
Well, now your Scarecrow will have friends on the other side.
I was actually thinking of getting a voodoo priest cane of sorts, or like a staff that they have there, but God, that store just costs way too much. Like I said before, like I said yesterday, the gloves there cost like $20. Fucking Scarecrow gloves, $20.
It's a shame you don't live closer to me because I actually collect canes and walking sticks. It's one of the things that I collect.
Yeah.
And I have every kind you could conceivably want. I even have what's referred to as a medicine stick, which is basically a Native American like ceremonial staff.
Wait, did it I might have that actually. Because there was like there's been like these festival we have around where I'm at, and a few years up, I say a few years, but it was a while back actually. I had bought a staff with like a feather on it and stuff, and it looked really cool. I would have to get like a picture and send to you, Dalton. Like
Mine does have some feathers on it, but it also has like a rabbit's pelt around part of it, and it's like studded with various symbols, and it's got a ram's horn at the top, and a little what's referred to as a medicine wheel, which is basically the archetypical dream catcher attached to. I got it in New Mexico when my brothers were competing in a shooting competition. It was around my birthday, so for my birthday we went out, and there was like a Native American village nearby, so I got to do some shopping because I of course enjoy the mystical and the tribal and the what have you. So that was fun.
That is bad motherfucking ass.
It was, and it is. It's currently taking pride of place at the heart of my walking stick collection, which sits up against the wall in the corner of my room. I'll have to one of these days I'll have to send you some pictures of all of the antiques and whatnot that I have, because it's quite awesome, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So with that, I guess we can move on to the final topic, which is one
Yeah.
Dolan will be taking full reins of. Beginnings of Halloween, or Samhain, or All Hallows Eve, or various other titles that holiday has. So,
Insert your favorite Dark Harvest Festival here.
please take the reins, Dalton. I will, and with that, I will be right back.
Okay, so here is the thing about Halloween. Originally, it was known, well, actually, to be fair, being as thorough as I possibly can here, almost every culture that has an agricultural element to it, any culture that has a significant focus on farming, has some variety of harvest festival. And of those that have a variety of harvest festival, so too they have a respect or a reverence for sort of the darker aspects of nature and the supernatural and the dead. Because in most of these cultures, there's a belief that there are walls of energy between sort of the mundane physical dimension and the other dimensions, which are spiritual in nature. They're usually just referred to as something like the veils. And as with anything else in nature, the veils fluctuate. And so, at certain times throughout the year, the veil gets thin, and the beings that reside on one or the other end of the veil can cross between dimensions. This includes both the dead and, in the case of the Celts, where we get most of our modern Halloween traditions. It also included the other world, or the realm of spirits, usually nature spirits, i.e. fairies. And the thing of it was, these forces were not to be fucked with, so the Celts did a lot of celebrating of them in a festival we currently know today as Halloween, but was originally referred to as Samhain or Samhain, depending on how bad your old Celtic is.
I am back.
Yeah. The origins of what we understand as trick or treating has to do with if you needed to go out on Samhain or Samhain, and you were worried about getting taken advantage of by wandering spirits, you would dress akin to said wandering spirits in order to protect yourself. And also, sometimes when villages would leave offerings to the spirits, troublemakers would then mask themselves up as, what they assumed those spirits looked like, and take from the offering table, because of course you didn't offer the crumbs and the scraps and what have you. You offered the best, whatever the best of the harvest had given you, basically. the use of these harvest festivals was mostly to be reverent and appreciative of the plenty that the harvest had offered you, and to essentially jumpstart the battery of nature, as it were. Because of course, the veil being torn for a little bit was useful and could be used for like communing with the dead, communing with fairies, communing with gods, etc. But the veil being permanently torn and everything remaining dead as a result of the veil being torn, not so much. So essentially, the harvest festivals were sort of to jumpstart the battery of nature again. At see later on, once that happened, there was a celebration of that too, to sort of take advantage of that surplus energy. But that's a holiday rant for another day. As to how Samhain or just general like pre-Abrahamic or pre-Christian harvest festivals conglomerated and morphed into what we now call Halloween, that's mostly the fault of the collapsing Roman Empire, because of course, right before the collapse of the Roman Empire, the Roman Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and because the emperor did it, by default, the rest of the empire did it as well. And unlike the pre-Christian Romans, who basically just let people keep their religions and their gods as long as they made space for their emperors among them, the Christians were a lot more isolationist, i.e., you will convert or you will die. But as they went conquering throughout the what we now call the Western world, a lot of people were like, "Fuck you! I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping the celebration of my things because uh, holidays are fun and were an excuse to, be grateful for all the good that life had to offer. And given that this was the, pre-modern era, that was kind of important. But also because the traditions of these cultures very often said that if these harvest festivals weren't observed in some way, the natural cycles would stop and things would remain dead for the foreseeable future. So, understandably, when Christians came along and said, "You need to stop celebrating this," the reply came back, "Go fuck yourself," many different ways and in many different languages, one can assume. So, what the church did to make the conversion easier was they made it so that you can keep celebrating this, but for church purposes, this is why you're celebrating it now. This is the reason we will document. Um, and so the holiday of All Saints' Day was born on November the 1st, which was essentially uh, the day when it was thought that the spirits of the saints could be most easily contacted because of the veils between worlds being torn. Obviously, some of the initial Samhain mythology did translate over into Christianity, so they kept it. And then later on, there was a All Souls or All Hallows Day created, which I believe is technically November the 2nd. Which incidentally is also the date of Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, in Mexican culture, because of course the Mayans also had a sort of darkness or death-oriented harvest festival type thing, and when the Christians did their converting over there, same thing happened, or a similar thing happened. But at any rate, because All Hallows Day existed the day before, which would have traditionally been Samhain evening, became All Hallows Eve, and that eventually got sort of mangled and morphed into Halloween. So essentially, every time the Christianized Romans would come across a harvest festival, they would take bits and pieces from each culture A large part was taken from the Celts. Some of it was taken from the Mayans, as with Dia de los Muertos, etc. And all of these traditions essentially got put in the melting pot, and out popped All Hallows Eve and eventually Halloween.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure Halloween itself is basically to kind of paraphrase Mr. Glass. It got swallowed up by the commercialism machine and spit out for, I believe, mass consumption.
Well, actually, there's a little bit of an interesting story there too, because for a while, in the early 1900s, Halloween was actually outlawed because a lot of people, particularly teenagers, would use it as an excuse for sort of rabble rousing. It was called Devil's Night, and so essentially the old customs of trick or treating, which then morphed in the Middle Ages into souling, um, was revived to essentially give the troublemakers something to occupy them, so they didn't um, do any massive destructiveness during that time period. And eventually, that's when companies sort of caught on to the Halloween fads as they were, and the modern sort of industry of Halloween began in earnest as we know it.
Hmm. So Devil's Night was a real thing. I thought it was something that the movie The Crow had come up with.
No, it was a real thing. Well, at least in the late 1800s through the early 1900s. Yes, it was a thing. By about 1930, Halloween had become a long-standing tradition, and of course, this worked out fine because many many parts of Europe had not stopped celebrating their old traditions, despite putting a Christian or monotheistic spin on everything. Um, in Germany, there's still yet another sort of quasi-harvest festival-ish thing called Walpurgis Night, which is essentially the night of witches, because Walpurga in ancient Germanic folklore was sort of the patron deity of witches. And of course, because witches got finangled in with the devil in the medieval sort of cosmology, Walpurgis Night was supposed to be a day that or a night that you were supposed to stay in if you were a good little Christian, because otherwise the nasty marauding witches might get you, because nothing works quite as well to put fear in people's minds than, ooh, the nasty spooky thing might get you, I guess.
Yeah, people were really stupid back then. Well, I say were, but
Well, yeah, we're still very susceptible to, ooh, the scary spooky threat narrative. Vis-a-vis, call everything you don't like a Nazi, then people will actively avoid it because you called it a Nazi thing.
that's a topic for another time, folks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's very interesting. See how like the holiday has kind of grown and expanded and become not exactly completely different, but has changed over the long, I would assume, centuries it's existed.
Well, millennia actually. We know at the very least that Samhain is as old as stone circles like Stonehenge or any of the various other hinges that are in the British Isles, which all well and truly predate the birth of Christ and even possibly the birth of Judaism. So for anyone who thinks that Christianity or the Abrahamic religions got there first, sorry, but I must burst your bubble.
Hmm. Huh. Um. So I have to ask about the pumpkins, like jack-o'-lanterns thing.
Yeah. Well, incidentally, um, despite being a big fixture in Native American sort of folklore for hundreds and possibly thousands of years, they're a relatively new addition to the sort of Halloween lore because they're not native to Europe, or at least the versions of them that are native to Europe are very, very small in comparison to the ones we have in America. Initially, jack-o'-lanterns were actually produced using turnips. There was an old legend about a guy named Jack-o'-lantern who was so evil that hell didn't want him, and in fact the devil actually feared him. So he wandered the countryside instead, using a turnip light to light his way, and of course he died by having his head cut off, so he carved a face into it, and thus the jack-o'-lantern as we know it was born.
Hmm. I honestly have nothing to say, just on the fact that one, that would be one hell of a movie. Two, that's a really cool like bit of history for something that's kind of thought of as minuscule today.
Yeah, and of course, when the legend of Jack-o'-lantern got passed around, people started making those turnip lights as sort of a means of protecting themselves from any marauding spirits that might want to vandalize them. And when English and German um, settlers came to the New World, and the Native Americans kind of held the pumpkin to be sacred, it only sort of fit that they started using pumpkins for their jack-o'-lanterns.
Hmm.
Yeah, most icons of Halloween were essentially the sort of remnants of ancient protection magic.
And how do you feel that no one knows that film as an occultist?
Well, I kind of make it one of my missions in life every time these holidays come up to be very lore oriented. And that's one of the reasons why the movie Trick or Treat is one of my favorite Halloween movies, because sort of the moral of the stories of Trick or Treat are respect the lore, goddammit. Learn to respect the lore of this day. It's not just Hallmark cards and TV specials that actually, goes to something a lot deeper, because a large part of the purpose of um acknowledging the dead and acknowledging the spirits of Samhain or Halloween was to sort of um revere and respect the darker aspects of nature. That's sort of what it ultimately boils down to. Where holidays like Yule or what eventually became Christmas are about sort of incubating the positive hearth and home aspects of nature. The Halloween and Samhain and all of the adjoining harvest festivals that Halloween borrows from were always sort of about respecting and refining and learning to be reverent of the darker aspects of nature, because in at least the pagan and pre-Abrahamic conception, dark doesn't always mean straight up evil. Dark just usually means more primal, more intense, more sort of instinctive, and you have to pay deference to that as well, as much as we would prefer everything was, lollipops and rainbows. It's good to walk on what Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, would refer to as the shadow side every now and then.
Cool.
Yeah. It was really kind of essentially, don't be afraid of the dark, but also don't be an idiot, as it were.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of don't wallow in fear and be a coward, but also don't be an irreverent jackass, because these forces aren't designed to hurt you, but they also should be respected.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of done.
Well, we can talk more about Halloween if you have any other questions or queries or something that's going to set me off into a ramble.
Nothing really comes to mind now, fortunately.
Well, let's see. We talked about the origins of the jack-o'-lantern. We talked about the origin of the trick-or-treating and the giving of candy and things of that nature.
We talked about basically the tricks and stuff, Devil's Night.
Yeah.
Costumes as well.
Yeah. So let's see, other things Halloween oriented we could talk about.
What about decorations of the house, I guess? Or is there nothing really to that, or?
A lot of that, as with most holiday traditions, are, like I said, sort of protective measures and sort of quasi-magical rituals. Christmas too has this aspect, and I went into that a little bit more last year when I did my A Mystics Vlogs Christmas special. Go check it out if you when it gets closer to Christmas, if you're curious. I will be doing a Halloween oriented A Mystics Vlog special as well, provided my friend gets me my theme song soon enough that I can give it to Brainstormer to put some kind of visuals to, and then we can be off to the races with a new round of content for my channel. But who knows if that will actually come to any kind of fruition. And if it gets close enough to Halloween and he hasn't provided it for me yet, I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway, because at the very least my Halloween special needs to be made. It should have been made last year, but I got caught up in things. So I'll probably end up doing Trick or Treat, because that has a lot of Halloween lore to go over. I'll probably end up doing I'll probably end up doing a couple other different Halloween specials as well. Like I always try to do my specials in threes, so I'll have to find two other sort of Halloween lore oriented things that I can talk about for the Halloween special. But it will be done. Hopefully, might be a little late. but that's just how the cookie crumbles. Although I do have some leeway because, like I said, Dia de los Muertos takes the sort of Halloween season all the way into November. And incidentally, I don't remember exactly when Valpurgis Night was. I want to say sometime in November as well, but I might be mistaken. It might actually be sometime in May. It's kind of moved around a few times throughout the century.
Actually, I do have a question about relating to Halloween.
Okay.
Have there been any type of major events within the occult circles relating to either the month of October or All Hallows Eve or Samhain or stuff like that?
What exactly do you mean, like major events?
I guess like I don't know, like spells or anything.
Well,
By
yeah,
that,
I mean, most practitioners of magic do still mark Halloween as a good time for spellcasting because of the nature of the veils being thinner on and around Halloween. And of course, midnight is considered sort of the universal witching hour, and things like last year I did my sort of reverence ritual for the holiday um, at exactly at exactly midnight on Halloween, and I was quite happy with that. Although the spell ended up getting botched because I didn't prepare enough beforehand, and that's a whole nother issue. Even I'm not immune to incompetence when it comes to that shit. But oh well. But yeah, a lot of practicing um, sort of magic users still mark Halloween with various rituals and things because, you know, if you need to cross into the realm of the dead or you need to evoke certain spirits, the best time to do it is when there aren't a bunch of spiritual walls in the way. Um, and also, you know, just magical energy in general seems to flow a little easier on and around Halloween. So it essentially supercharges magic, particularly magic of kind of the more primal variety. Spring is more of an appropriate time for more sort of abundance related magic, but when it comes to like um paying respect to darker primal forces, Halloween is it um among occult circles. I know Wiccans actually have or actually use a lot of the older Celtic holidays still. I don't subscribe to one particular magical religion. I'm I will take bits and pieces of whatever I need to find, you know, the magical aspects of any spiritual path, basically. I'm kind of a universalist in that regard. But I still try to honor those days because A, it's useful, and B, I don't need angry spirits mad at me because I didn't acknowledge them. And I'm aware that that's an irrational fear, but you know, a properly placed apple spell a day keeps the Samhain goblin of trick or treat fame away, I guess.
Sorry, I'm trying to look for the pictures. Because you talked about it yesterday. About you took pictures of the spell and
Oh yeah, I did, and I uploaded them to Twitter last Halloween.
I'm still in June.
Ah,
No, July. This will take a while.
you know, you can go to media and it'll show like all the pictures and stuff that I've
Yeah,
used.
that's where I'm at.
Okay,
That's
so
why. Yeah.
you're scrolling through that part then. That's good.
You have 872 photos and videos.
You know, that probably shouldn't surprise me, but wow, that's a lot. But then again, I do use Twitter more than I probably should, so shame on me. Shame, shame, shame.
Now I'm in June. But yeah, you know what? Actually, this is a personal question. Why do you like Halloween? Just so we're
Well, I like holidays in general because they tie us back to so much lore and history and sort of they're still significant days. I think especially in the modern era, we have an issue with things being given significance and unironically ascribing things significance. So the fact that days like Halloween and Christmas and all the other like major holidays have stuck around in some form or other for so long is extremely meaningful to me. But like I said, Halloween is about sort of embracing the darker, more primal aspects of human nature and of nature in general. And um, as someone who practices magic, not only is that extremely useful to me, but that's um, also sort of extremely refreshing because I always like to joke that for 1 month out of the year, the weird shit that I'm into doesn't look quite as weird. Um, and it's nice that we have a time devoted specifically to the things that go bump in the night and all the things that we used to fear and actually devote some kind of love to them, honestly, because um I'm sure you can attest to this, brainstormer, as someone who also really enjoys Halloween. It's kind of weird that we set aside a time in the year to love things that by rights we should be afraid of. But in a lot of ways, I think showing those things that kind of love is sort of what keeps the wolf away from the door. If you take my meaning, I guess.
yeah.
Because
Um,
because everything needs love. That's not to say that you shouldn't approach these things with caution. And for anyone that wants to get started with magic, for the love of God, take it seriously and know what the fuck you're doing. For the love of all of the deities and all of the pantheons, know what the fuck you are doing and take things seriously. But um, I do think it's important that we remember sort of where we've come from and where we've been, and it, it's easy for us in our modern sort of secular society to just go, no, that could never be something I would take seriously. But for that 1 month out of the year, you at least allow your imagination to run a little bit wild. And I think there's some value in that to be had, to let your guard down and stop with the that could never happen to me bullshit, and just kind of acknowledge, even just jokingly, the roots of the forces of nature as they are. Because we all have a dark side, but like I said, dark doesn't always have to mean evil. And the easiest way to prevent your darkness from becoming evil is to tame it. And you can't tame a dog you're always afraid of. So you kind of have to the easiest way to tame a wild dog is by showing it a little bit of affection. We like to think that as humans we're somehow separate from nature, but in actuality we're just a stone's throw away from apes, just like every other fucking mammal species on the planet. So it's good to it's good to sort of try and cancel out fear with love and try to understand ourselves rather than repressing. But
Mhm.
that's just my 2 cents on the matter anyway. I don't know. I can't speak for other people, but that's one of the reasons why I love Halloween. I love Christmas too, but they are very different. They are very different sort of sides of the same coin. We like for everything to be love and light all the time, but sometimes you need a little bit of that sort of instinctive self-interest and sort of self-involvement.
Yeah. For me, actually, it's a layered thing, honestly, because the first Halloween I can remember, I don't know how old I was, but my grandmother had made me a Power Rangers costume. Like she had made it herself.
Which ranger? Just out of curiosity.
Red.
Was it for a specific team or was it just kind of universal?
I think it was Ninja Storm or something. It was like cloth costume and stuff. So.
Okay. So if we're going by the like lore of Power Rangers, you would have been the Red Wind Ranger.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I went trick or treating with my little sister, who I don't know. I think maybe I'm 4 or something. So she would have been 2. Um, but yeah, that was like one of the first early Halloweens I remember. Not. I don't remember a lot of Halloweens after that. And as I got older, I started to kind of grow more attached to like the macabre and the kind of wackiness and kookiness of Halloween, like the whimsical side of it.
Yeah.
I started growing more attached to Tim Burton stuff and
Yeah.
things along that line.
There's definitely something to be said for the love of the weird, because like I said, I was sort of born a little bit weird and a little bit dark, and it's nice to know that you're not alone in the kind of dark macabre nature. Like I remember the first time I ever watched the Addams Family movie when they were talking about what it means to be an Addams. I remember thinking I probably wouldn't be out of place in the Addams Family.
Mm.
And the fact that there's an entire festival to sort of get the fuck out of our normal comfort zone and embrace a little bit of the weird and the dark and the sort of whimsical aspect of human nature.
I think I was more of a monsters guy than Adam's Family. I mean, I like the movies and I've seen a little bit of the classic TV show. I think the first thing I saw was the monsters.
See, I saw them both around the same time, but I never really got attached to the monsters. I was always more the Adams, because the Adams were, despite their macabre nature, still human, whereas the monsters were monsters, and so there was always that kind of layer to them. And also, the monsters was more of a straightforward sitcom, with just kind of the trappings of horror and Halloween and things like that. Um, whereas the Addams Family was a weird, macabre show that occasionally gave deference to sitcom tropes.
Well, I mean, like I think they're both good. Obviously, I just.
Yeah, they're just very different.
Mhm.
And I am, by the way, looking forward to the new Addams Family animated movie. Um, I'm glad to see that Gomez kind of got his Hispanicness back, because much as I love Raul Julia, they basically just completely avoided the fact that Gomez is supposed to be Hispanic.
As a Hispanic myself, maybe I should take offense to that.
True, but it's probably better not to be in the habit of taking offense to things in general.
No, I was gonna say, but then I realized I don't care. It was
Yeah.
still fun. It was still a fun and enjoyable performance by the lead actor.
Yeah, Gomez Adams is still an awesome character, and the Adams family is still one hell of a family. Um,
Yeah. By the way, I found your pictures.
aha.
For one thing, they're on November 1st instead of in October.
Right, because I took them at midnight on Halloween, so I had to upload them technically on the 1st of November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. For those disappointed by my lack of videos released today, my Halloween festivities took up more time and attention than I wanted, and I was punished by some uncooperative mandrake root and apparently non-flammable oils. And you all know how I hate sloppy, unstructured casting.
Yeah.
And you have 2 likes on that tweet, and now 3.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I was trying to sort of charge an amulet that I had, and said charging would have required sort of burning away the ash on it, and unfortunately the oil I had was non-flammable, much to my chagrin, so sloppy, unstructured spell work it was. But you live and you learn, and I still managed to sort of draw a little bit of energy out of the ritual itself. So not complaining, just annoyed that I didn't get to use the spell for what it was meant for.
I don't know why, but for some reason I'm hungry when looking at these pictures.
Strangest reaction to spell work ever. I'm sorry. That was really adorable. I'm sorry.
Um, this actually brings up an interesting thing because I remember you saying that you would be interested in me being an apprentice in magic when I would start looking it up and studying it.
I
Um,
mean, if you want to, I'm certainly not going to pressure you into anything.
no, I understand that and I get that. I was just going to say that I probably wouldn't be a good apprentice nor an occultist, just on the fact that when I actually do work and things, I end up taking a lot of shortcuts and stuff like that to kind of maximize my time. And I
Mhm.
feel like for for the work of magic and things, you do not take shortcuts.
Well, in general, no, taking shortcuts is probably not a good idea. That being said, there are more simplified forms of magic that you probably still get away with. Like most forms of folk magic are kind of haphazard in nature. Um, and that being said, some of the most powerful um, magic users I have known have been into what's referred to as low magic or folk magic.
Hmm. But yeah, no, I would say for myself, I I just wouldn't trust myself to in working the spells.
Well, again, who knows? Maybe when you start doing research, something will click. That's sort of how, in my experience, whenever someone stumbles on magic for the first time, that's sort of how it works. Like they don't think of themselves that way, and then all of a sudden something clicks, and it's like, oh, this makes perfect sense to me somehow. How did that work? That was certainly sort of how it happened with me. In fact, I don't think I've ever I may have told it a couple of times, the story of how I sort of transitioned from what I was doing before magic to magic. Um, when I was about 9 years old, I got really heavily interested in theoretical physics, and that lasted for about 2 years. So around the age of 11, I was coming home from school one day, and I was sitting down to watch my favorite show at the time, which was called Strange Days at Lake Halsey High. Great show if anyone's curious. It's semi-educational, but you probably won't notice because it's really good with the drama and whatnot. But anyway, so I started going through all the things I knew about physics, and I started kind of asking myself physics questions, and I figured out that even for the stuff I didn't know, like the concrete answers to, I could kind of extrapolate from what I did know, um, as to how that worked. And then it occurred to me that all the things that I didn't have answers for, like questions of, the spiritual uh, sort of nature, um, science wasn't really all that useful for. But I also wasn't going to look into religion because religions are mostly about stories and narratives and beings rather than hard and fast sort of logical rules and things like that. So I thought to myself, there has to be a system that is both rational and spiritually oriented. And in my searches, I found magic. And the funny way I ended up starting getting into magic in the first place is kind of hilarious as well. Because for Christmas that year, uh, someone in my family, I can't even remember who, had gotten me one of the ology books for Christmas. I don't know if you remember the ology books. They were like, there was one called Dragonology, another one called Mythology, another one called Wizardology. And the one I got was the Wizardology one. And despite the fact that it was very obviously kind of meant to be parody-esque, um, some things about the Wizardology book made sense to me. So I started seriously looking into magic, and I found one of the books that I recommended to you, which is Good Magic by Murina Medici. And from then on, I was essentially hooked on magic because it clicked and it filled the hole that I needed to fill at the time. And 13 and a half years later, here I am.
Yeah. It's amazing how many different steps and paths that were laid in front of you, and you took one that I think not even you could have guessed it's where you ended up.
No, and in fact, when I was into my physics phase, I really hated the concept of magic. Because I believed that science and spirituality couldn't coexist and that science made more sense. Well, cut to about 6 months later, when I started asking myself metaphysical questions, and boom. So, although to be fair, when I was a real young kid, I did enjoy, like I said, Halloween and Christmas and those kind of things long before I ever knew what physics was. So it was kind of inevitable that I would find a way of sort of sublimating my old sort of mystical tendencies into something more legitimate. And I'm glad I did. Magic is hard, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. That being said, magic is hard, and the rewards to work ratio is a little bit lopsided. It takes It takes a lot of work for just a little bit of reward sometimes. But, you know, then again, I also never really had a natural inclination for it. What little I've achieved through magic, I've worked my ass off to get. The sad thing is that my first attempt at an apprentice did appear to have a natural sort of spiritual inclination to him, and unfortunately, I don't think he'll ever get a chance to explore that now because his father was a religious dickhead who basically gave me an ultimatum. That story I've told many times, so I don't need to go into it again.
Yeah, I would say you're not inclined to, but yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's important because that was the first time I had ever actually been sort of tested in the realm of magic. The first time I learned, to quote Rumpelstiltskin, that all magic comes with a price. Like, I had read that magic came with a price, but I was an arrogant little kid, and I thought, yeah, but that's kind of overreacting, isn't it? I'm sure if I just do this, this, and this, that won't be too bad, will it? And then that happened, and I'm like, oh, this is what happens when you let the prices go, when you let the prices ring up too much.
yeah. Um, Honestly, I got really nothing else to say. Feel like we're gonna have ourselves busy tomorrow.
Yeah,
Um,
we definitely will, and this will be the first true podcast at the Storm episode in the month of October. So seasonal and very spooky greetings to you all. Uh, will be in store for the next few weeks.
so with that, folks, we want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom. Mind the veils and fuck off.